Every man was created with an identity and purpose. That means you. But if life has broken you and robbed you of your identity and purpose, I'm here to tell you that you are not listening to this episode by accident. And that is proof that it's not too late to find out who you are and what you were created for. This is your chance. Listening to this episode is the first step towards wholeness and life-changing transformation. I have a guest here who will walk you through the next steps in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our proud sponsor of this episode and the Fatherhood Challenge, Ingenious Prep. Ingenious Prep is the world's premier admissions consulting firm, proud to be officially recognized as the country's top college admissions consultants, helping students prepare for admissions to top schools through individualized educational programs that increase chances of admission by up to 10 times. Ingenious Prep students work with former admission officers to differentiate themselves from other competitive students in 3 areas colleges evaluate students: in academics, extracurricular activities, and personal characteristics. Just this past admission cycle, Ingenious Prep students have secured 110 offers from Ivy League schools, 268 offers from top 20 schools, and 904 offers from top 50 schools. Ingenious Prep student success lies within the fact that Ingenious Prep is an all-in-one consulting firm offering every service a family needs, whether it be test prep, tailored candidacy building mentorship, academic mentorships, the Leadership and Innovation Lab, soft skills courses, writing courses, and other customized programs to develop their application persona to the most effective and authentic extent to share with colleges. Just click on the link in the episode description to book a free strategy call with one of Ingenious Prep's college experts. Or you can visit ingeniusprep.com. That's ingeniusprep.com. And let them know you came from the Fatherhood Challenge.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is licensed professional counselor Chris Bruno. Chris is an author of several books that we'll talk about shortly, and he's also the founder of the Restoration Project. The Restoration Project is all about rediscovering the man you were made to be and bringing your restorative presence to the world. And if his name sounds familiar on this program, it's because he's made an appearance on 2 other episodes, and now I've brought him back a 3rd time just because his insights are so valuable. Chris, welcome back to the Fatherhood Challenge.
Man, thank you so much. It is so good to be back with you again.
For those hearing your voice for the first time, please share your story of how you got involved with restoring men and fathers.
It was really a personal journey first. It was part of my own story as I was growing up as a young man. I was living overseas in international ministry. I was giving leadership to a team of a bunch of young men. I was married, and then I produced a child of my own son. And it was kind of in that moment of recognizing, like, do I have internally everything that is being asked of me externally? Do I have the reserves, the sense of identity, the sense of my well-being, a sense of who I am to be able to offer leadership and guidance and to these young men I was working with, the students I was working with, and then mostly my own son. I wanted to make sure that I was the father that he needed me to be. And so that's really what began my journey is for me. And then as I did it, I started to look around, and other guys were like, what are you doing? How's this? Really wanted to train myself and get into the work of helping other guys do this, because I firmly believe that when men are restoring themselves, I don't want to say restored, because I don't think it's ever a finished process here on earth. But when we are in the process of becoming restorative men, the world actually shifts and changes. So that's kind of how I got into it. It's my own personal journey.
What is so important about fathers understanding their identity and purpose, and how is their story woven into both?
I believe that for us men, if we are disconnected and unprepared for the journey of manhood, then what will end up happening is that we will either wander through life kind of blind, not knowing what to do, trying to figure it out, or we will barge through life like a bull in a china shop, and there will be debris all around us. Either way, if we are absent or in that case violent, right, then we're not serving the world around us. We're not actually the men that we were designed to be. So when men have that sense of identity and purpose, when men have a sense of like, this is who I am and this is why I am, those two things combined, that actually creates such a brilliant impact on the world around us. Who we are is designed to be part of the greater story of the world around us. And your question is, how is our story woven into both of those things? Well, our story is actually the story of our identity and of our worth, of our purpose, why we're here. So, who we are is written into the code of our being, into our brains, into our spirit, into our soul. That is who we were designed to be, and therefore, as a result, it is the story that we were meant to tell. The issue is that so much of the world, broken, fallen, that it is, impacts us. And so we come to believe a different story. We don't believe that we're actually meant to be something important or have an identity. Like I just mentioned, we start to believe a lesser story, a smaller story, one that is actually unworthy of us, but that's the one that we come to believe. And so the work that I'm all about is helping us actually return to what I call the first story, the story where you were designed and intended in the way that you were, instead of the second story, the one that you've come to believe about yourself as a result of the tragedies, traumas, brokenness, relationships that have gone awry, all the things that have happened in your life that make you believe something less than.
I like how you talk about your purpose and identity written as a code into your being, into who you are.
Mm.
God even hints he knew us before we were born. Scrolls are written about your purpose. The tears that you would cry and why you would cry them are all written. One of my favorite, and I challenge you to go read it for yourself, but Psalm 139.
And I love the combination of both identity and purpose. And because I feel like those are two things that are we tend to separate those into two separate categories. Who am I and what am I supposed to do? But I actually believe that they're very interwoven together, almost like two sides of the same coin. And that I love you just referred to Psalm 139. One of the places I often go in the scriptures is to Ephesians chapter 2, where Paul is talking about how we are the masterpiece, the handiwork of God,
I love that.
that we are the masterpiece, meaning that in order for the master to start painting your masterpiece, he had to know who you were first, and then he painted that purpose, that identity into you. And actually the root word there is poema. He poeted those things into you. And so when we think about purpose, well, what is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do? I actually believe every man's purpose is to be a restorative man in the world that God has placed him. And that may be like occupationally something different from me or you or whoever, but occupation is not purpose. Vocation, voice, who you are. The Latin root of that is vocare, like what is the voice that you were meant to bring? That always is to be restorative, partnering with God in the restoration of the world. That is his call for all of us. And your unique placement in wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever family you have a purpose, and that purpose is to be restorative.
The two top enemies of a father believing is shame and
Mhm.
unworthiness. How does a dad listening now that is experiencing that shame and that is keeping them from believing their true identity and purpose that God created them to
Mm,
be, how do they
yeah.
shed that?
Shame is not original. Sin is original, but shame is not. That we talk about in that we know that we are fallen beings as we come into the world as a result of the fall in Genesis, that we are fallen. We have original sin, and yet there is not original shame. That is not part of the story. We learn shame. We learn how to be in an experience of shame, because the message of shame is that there is something wrong with you. The message of sin is that you've done something wrong. But the message of shame is that there is something intrinsically wrong with you, and that there couldn't be something more anti-biblical than that, right? What did we just talk about? I just mentioned, like, you are a masterpiece. There is something about you. Psalm 139, the scrolls are more true about you than your shame. All of the messages, all of the thinking, all of who God made you to be, before you even existed, is more true about you than your shame. And so the process of shedding shame is a journey. It is identifying what it is identifying where it showed up. Shame is always rooted in the context of some broken relationship, because shame is always about the exposure. I don't want you to see how unworthy I am. I don't want you to see me for who I really am, because I'm afraid you're going to reject me. Shame is a relational concept. And so to shed shame is to identify the places in your story where shame first showed up, what relationships it first showed up in, and what messages shame was telling you. When you can begin to do that deep work of recognizing those things, then you can begin to unravel the kind of chains of shame that have been wrapped around your soul. But if you're just trying to like break free from shame by mere power and grit, it just doesn't work, because that the power is strong. It takes a relational context to heal a broken relational context. Relationships are broken, and it takes relationships to heal, which is why we have a God that is all about pursuit of relationship with us. He's not about the pursuit of principles and doctrines and rights and wrongs. He's about the pursuit of connection with us and relationship.
I've referenced you so many times in talking about the generation train and why it's so important to understand who's on board and why. I can't do this topic justice the same as hearing it from the source. So, Chris, tell us about the generational train.
The phrases I often say is that trauma is passed down from generation to generation until someone is brave enough to feel it. Okay. And it will just continue. So when I talk about this generational train, it's like you were born onto an already moving train. And the stories that have gone before deeply impact who you are today. Those stories of your family, your mother, your father, whether they were present or not, whether they were, the best parents on the planet or not, every parent along the way was born outside of Eden, was not born not perfect. And so therefore there is some level of imperfection in how they raised you and how they impacted you. And some of you are going like, well, I had the best parents on the planet. I'm like, bless you. I'm so grateful that was your story. And there are still some places where they missed because they're imperfect people. And some of you listening are like, oh my gosh, I can totally name all the places where my parents missed. Well, I want to name like, and their parents and their parents and their parents, all of the trauma is passed down from generation to generation until someone is brave enough to feel it, identify it, name it, work on it, and basically like stop the train so that some new transformational work can be done. Because as a father, your children are born onto your train. And if you want to be a generation changing father, something has to be done inside of you. It's not about your chore chart. It's not about your discipline plan. It's about what happens inside of you that makes you a generation changing father. And the beauty is that, we also have in the scriptures that, we hear that the curse is passed from generation to generation. So is the blessing. So is the blessing. Okay. And so when it just takes one man to go like, okay, I am going to do the deep work unto the family tree that is coming after me. I'm going to change how this is going, because if I can transform the curse of what I've inherited to the blessing that I can offer, that is going to be also generation changing. It will be a totally different generation train. Now, the reality is you're still imperfect. It's not going to be the perfect train, but you can start to imbue into the narrative, into the story, into the journey of those coming after you, some things that are restorative versus destructive.
A dad who chooses to do that work is a dad who's very purposeful about leaving a legacy, which we're broken record on this program. We talk
Yeah.
over and over about leaving a legacy, and there's a perfect example of what that can look like.
Yeah. The thing that I often think that us men get caught up into is that the legacy that we leave has nothing to do with your will. It's nothing to do with how you're going to write your last will and testament. A lot of people think that the legacy they leave is the business or the house or the bank
Hmm.
account or the 401k or those. No, legacy has nothing to do with your will. It has everything to do with the person that you are and the transformation that you've experienced with and for Jesus unto your children and future generations. That is the legacy that you leave.
There's a slogan on the Restoration Project website that says, "Heal your wounds, know your God, restore your world." How do those
Mhm.
words align with the mission and purpose of a dad? And how does a father begin achieving those goals?
These are what we call kind of the three waypoints or mile markers on the journey to becoming a restorative man. Uh, Here, I live in Colorado, and so we have big, giant 14,000 foot mountains, and there are various waypoints where like, okay, I'm making my movement up towards the summit. So, healing your wounds is much of what I just said. It is attending to the places in your life and in your story where there is some aspect of tragedy or trauma that needs to be tended to. There's some kind of broken relationship that needs to be tended to, and I don't just mean like today. I mean really the broken relationships of the past or the setup for the broken relationships of the present. And so, to be doing some healing of your wounding as a boy, as a child, that needs to be tended to. If those things are not healed, then you're going to continue to be stuck. You're going to continue to live out of the brokenness of those wounds until you can tend to them. So, heal your wounds is the first, and then know your God. Like, this is the more that we come to know who He is, the more that we come to know who we are, and the more that we actually come to know the masterpiece that He has written, painted, poeted into me and you and the next guy and the next person and your wife and your children, the more that we come to know the masterpiece, the more that we come to know the master. And so, to know your God is to really like spend time, space, curiosity, conversation in who is this God? Who is this God who, before the beginning of time, created me and created you and created this world for us? Who is that God, and what kinds of false conceptions do I have around who He is? So many of us have this template of our own Father's face that we put onto the face of God. And in the failings of our fathers, we assume are going to also be the failings of God, or at least we act that way, even if we don't say it. So we absolutely need to know who God is. And I want to combine the two, healing your wounds and knowing your God. The more that I can recognize the cracks and the crevices of the brokenness in my own life, the more I can actually invite the healing presence of Jesus into my life, into my story, into my past, into my brokenness, right? The more I actually get to experience who this God is, because I get to address, like, oh my gosh, I am more broken than I realized, or I have more shame or more sin or whatever than I realized. Thanks be to God. Come to me, Father, for I want to know you. So, healing your wounds is actually part of knowing God, and knowing God is actually part of healing your wounds. And then the third waypoint is restore your world. As I said, every man is meant by God to be a restorative man. Every single one. We are partners with God. This goes all the way back to the invitation that God had for Adam and Eve to rule over the earth, to partner with him to bring about goodness on the planet and amongst the people. And so I think restore your world. We have an option: restore or destroy. And I would choose restore every day. And I think people listening would choose restore every day too. But it takes that intentionality to not just let apathy or anything else, kind of distraction, take us away from the intention of God to restore. We in English, we have the word father is both a noun and a verb. It is both a noun representing a person, and it is a verb representing an action. And so I feel like to father, whether or not you have children, every man is called to father. And I would equate to father with being a restorative man, bring restoration to everywhere we go.
I had this misconception that we got to sidestep the pain and go around it. And that was the
Mm,
path towards healing.
mhm,
And when I finally let God into that part of my life, into the painful parts, and let Him actually take over the process of healing me, I discovered
mhm,
that I was wrong about everything. The
mm,
pathway to healing is God takes you through the pain that you want to go around, the pain that you want to run from is the
mm,
very thing He takes you through, right through the middle of it. But the
mhm.
difference is He is your father, He wants to be your heavenly father, and He is intentional about walking through that pain beside you. And that's so important because that's exactly where He wants to be in your own life. He wants you to get used to His presence.
Yes, yes. I Thanks for saying that. And like, which one of us actually does want to walk through a season of pain? I would say none of us. And actually not even Jesus, right? We cannot have resurrection without death, and we cannot have death without the crucifixion. And it was Jesus himself who begged God, can there be another way? I don't want to go through this pain. And yet, the answer was no. In order for resurrection to happen, we have to go through the descendant journey down through crucifixion into death so that the ascendant journey can happen. There is no bypassing the process of healing or, in this case, resurrection. It just doesn't happen.
You've written a book called Brotherhood Primer, a man's guide for turning buddies into brothers. Why is it
Yes.
so essential for dads to have their true brothers in their lives? And what is at least one of the steps in your book that a dad must take to gain a true brother in his life journey?
I firmly believe that we were never meant to A, journey this life alone, or B, father alone. We were meant to be in the context of community. We were created by God in the context of relationship. The Father, Son, Spirit said, "Let us make mankind." And so, in the very kind of womb of community, we were created. And so therefore, like, we have this idea now that we're supposed to be these lone ranger men and rely on myself and all that. And the reality is, like, no, that's actually going to work against you. We have to be in the context of community, of a brotherhood. And I'll hear a lot also from men that, well, my wife is my best friend, and I don't need anybody else. And on one level, I want to say, like, I am so grateful that you have such a friendship inside of your marriage. Oh, that all marriages would be that way. And then the second thing I say, and that is a lot of pressure for your wife to to
Yes.
to hold all of the things that you as a man need to navigate through and talk through and wonder about. Like, that is a lot of pressure on her. So a brotherhood of men is a necessity for every man. And it is so, like, loneliness and isolation are the two greatest epidemics amongst men of our day. And so we have to address the building of community. And so I wrote the Brotherhood Primer because it's called a primer because it really is just meant to prime the pump, get things going, get moving in this. And it walks through how to ask other men to be part of a brotherhood, a small group with you, a small group of deeper friends. It walks through how do you get past just kind of talking about general everyday thing like the sports game or the what the pastor said in his sermon or what's happening in politics or what do you think about the weather today. Like how do you get past all of those things to the actual grit and text of life, which is our stories, and to get into sharing and understanding and listening and receiving and interacting around our stories. That's the process that takes you from a buddy, just hanging out, fishing, hunting buddy, or whatever, watching the game buddy, to a brother, which is such a different experience. Somebody who's deep in your life and in your story. So for a dad, I would say like if you are alone in the fathering journey, uh, a lot of guys will laugh. That's why I'm laughing now when I say this, because you actually have to just go out and ask another man on a date, just like you would go ask a woman on a date. You got to be like, hey, I like you. There's something in you and what I watch, I see, that I like, and I want to get to know you better. Can we go hang out? Can we have coffee? Can we go, grab a drink? Whatever it is. Can we go hike? Just ask another guy to go out and do something together with you, and maybe two or three, and be real intentional about like, hey, I need other men in my life, and I want there to be other men, not just for my sake, but for my wife's sake and for my kids' sake. I want there to be other men speaking into my general life, and would you be interested in that? The other piece that I would say is, I think in the world of men, particularly Christian men, we have lost the sense of what actual accountability is. I think so much of what we believe accountability is in these kinds of groups is that if I'm going to hold you accountable, that means that I'm going to ask you about your sin, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to check, keep you. It's more of a sin management project. Accountability, actually, in my mind, is not about your sin, but about that masterpiece within you, the man that God designed you to be, the one that's being called forth. So rather, yes, we may talk about the sin, but that's not the primary focus. It's like, and who are you becoming today? And how are you growing today? What is happening in your life today? What is challenging you today? And how are you seeing God show up in the healing your wounds journey that we're all on together?
I'd like for us both to speak to that dad who's either facing the last child leaving the home or the last child has already left the home. Is this the end? What's next?
In 2 days, my wife and I actually take our youngest off to college. We're going to be moving her into her dorm on Wednesday. So of this week, just 2 days from now. So it's right now for me. I am facing that. I've already launched 2, and this is our last. So in just a few days, we will be official empty nesters. It is. I'd say a couple of things here. First, it is not the end. It is just different. You will and forever be your child's father, and what they need from you now is different than what they needed when they were 5 or 10 or 15. It's something completely different. And some of the work that we do actually at Restoration Project is we have an entire experience that we run for dads of older kids who are on kind of the brink, on the precipice of launching. We have an entire experience where we take you overseas, and to give you kind of a wow experience together. But also in the midst of that, we're talking about what do we need to do to kind of clear the air from the past and prepare for the future? How do we move that child into less of a child and more into an adult? And now, rather than a father-child experience, now you have like a peer experience with the other. You'll always have that role in their lives, and they may always come to you, but now you're adult. You're not adult child, and that actually you have to do some work in that space as a father, to prepare for that. And the child, if that doesn't happen, then either the child will feel like, am I considered an adult now? Like, what does this look like? Can I participate in the adult things? And or not, or they'll go somewhere else to try to find it. So it's not the end. It is just different. It is just different. And with my two other adult children right now, there is less than I need to do for them on, like I said, when they were 5, and more around my availability. Am I available to listen? Am I available to just be with? Am I available to have empathy and compassion and some curiosity around what's going on? I think one of the defaults of us men is that we default into giving advice, and I do not give advice to my children unless I am specifically asked for advice. Most of the time, what our adult children need from us is our presence, not our advice. They just need to know that there is someone, my favorite 4 words in this space: bigger, stronger, kinder, wiser. Bigger, stronger,
Mm.
kinder, wiser. They need to know that they have a space to come back to. And that space is not like our actual living room or, someplace that we can go sit. It's an emotional, relational space that they can come back to with me and know that there is someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser, kinder, that will be present to them, listen to them, care for them, offer them just some compassion for what they're going through. And then, if asked, offer them some advice, because we've walked this journey before. We've gotten our first mortgage, we've opened our first credit card, we've moved and taken our first job, we've negotiated jobs, like we've gotten married, like all that kind of stuff we've done before. And so there may be some advice that we can give, but by and large, as they are walking through it, how they walk through it is going to be different from how you walk through it. But by and large, they need you present, and your face and your eyes more than they need your words.
And you've also written a book called Sage. And Sage to
Mhm.
me takes your role outside of just parenthood, outside of just,
Mhm.
you finished off your kids and they're now ready for adulthood, and it answers so many questions about that. What's next? Where does my life go from
Yeah.
here? I've raised my kids. Now what is my purpose?
In Sage, what I talk about, it's kind of a partnered book with my first book, Man Maker Project. Man Maker Project was all about the first rite of passage that a boy goes through to become a man. And it was written for fathers to help dads guide their sons through the journey of becoming a man. But I labeled it as the first passage, right? From boy to man. The way that I talk about Sage is that it's the second passage. And it's one that most men don't realize is actually part of our journey as men. We assume that once you go from boy to man, then you just stay a man the rest of your life. Well, there's actually another season after, as you just mentioned, after your kids launch, after some things are happening, in your life. Maybe you're looking at stepping out of the role that you're in at work or in your ministry or whatever it is, or maybe you're looking at retirement, or maybe you're looking at an empty home now, like that kind of thing. What is next? The Sage journey is that second passage from man into Sage, where you are recognizing like something inside of you now is settling. The energy that you needed to father your kids back 5 years ago is still inside of you, but it needs to be applied differently into the world, into further healing in your own life, into the world around you, your church, your ministry, your small group, your family. There is still something really important in becoming a sage, and I'll just say this, right. Not every man becomes an elder. Every man becomes elderly, but not every man becomes an elder. And it actually is, and I don't mean like the elder role in a church. I mean the elder of a society, the elder of a family, the elder that has that gravitas of presence that feels safe and secure and grounding. That actually is what I mean by sage. So that's what's next. Maybe you're going to retire. Maybe you're going to, quit work and go on and get the benefits that you've been working for. I'm not talking about retirement. Go play golf. It's fine. Go play golf. But so many men just let that be the thing that they are. They become a golfer. They don't become a sage. And I feel like, there are plenty of sages who golf. So, I just use that as an example, but I would love to see a generation of men who are intentional, being restorative men in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s. And the sage is the one that is hitting that second half of life. This is what it looks like to be a restorative man who has a few years under his belt.
Chris, how can dads get a hold of you for help or to learn more about what you're doing or to purchase any of your books?
All the books are on Amazon. So if you want to hop on Amazon, you can do that. Just search for Chris Bruno. Just heads up, there is another Chris Bruno. Great man. I've met him, talked to him. But he writes some other books too, some theological books. And so look for Chris Bruno Sage or Chris Bruno Man Maker Project. Chris Bruno Brotherhood Primer, and those will all come up on Amazon. You can also visit the Restoration Project website, which is restorationproject.net. Or if you're looking to do a little bit more on the deeper end of some personal work, I also give leadership to Restory Counseling, which is a counseling center here in Northern Colorado. But you don't have to live in Northern Colorado. You can live anywhere in the world, and we can come alongside of you. So check us out at restory.life.
Just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description. I'll have all of the links that Chris just mentioned posted there for your convenience. As we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
It's never too early, and it's never too late. So it's never too early. Even if you don't have kids yet, it's never too early to tend to the parts of your life that need to be tended to. Your story, your wounds, the broken relationships, all the things we've talked about in this episode. It's never too early to do this work. I think one of my favorite men that I got to work with one-on-one was a 21-year-old young man who was preparing for his future. He had not even met the woman he wanted to marry yet because he wanted to do some restoration in his life. So it's never too early. And you guys, it's never too late. It is never too late. I literally just a couple of weeks ago did some work with an 85-year-old who was wanting to do some work in life and story and family and transformation and healing and all that. And also some work around just like how he had fathered his family and wanting to heal some of the things of what he had done in his life towards his kids. So it's never too early and it's never too late. The question is not when, but if you're going to do it. And I just want to say, please do it. Please do it for the kingdom of God, and especially for the little K kingdom that is around you right now. Please do it.
Chris, thank you so much for coming back to the Fatherhood Challenge. It has been absolutely an honor having you here. Thank you for sharing all of the wisdom and knowledge with us and breathing so much hope into the lives of so many dads.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.